like to make a motion. I'd like to move that we appoint Jason as the pro tem.
I'd like to second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is approval of December Planning Commission meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the December meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. SBA is not submitting, they've withdrawn that, so next item on the agenda is the conditional use for Maple Alley with the Lititz Fire Company. I think I have to recuse myself.
Why would you have to recuse
Should I
yourself?
work with Mike?
But this is not on behalf of Dirk and Edson, it's on behalf of the Lititz Fire Company.
Okay.
So if it was Dirk and Edson presenting this, then you would be obliged to recuse.
Okay.
Mike needs to recuse himself though. Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recuse myself.
Thank you.
If you want anything on the screen, be shown.
If you have the picture of the existing structure, I think that would probably be the best. And then if you, I'm ready. You just let me know when you're ready, Elijah.
Up here in the-
Okay, I'm Mike Smith, Fire Chief of the Lititz Fire Company, also newly elected Vice Chair of the Planning Commission for Liddittsboro. That has nothing to do with the presentation, I just wanted to mention it. So we're here tonight, you guys have a submission in front of you. Real quick summary on the project. The project itself is very simple. We're looking to create a patio slash outdoor space, if you will, to the rear of the fire station. The fire station, there's actually a separate property to the rear of the fire station. That's the image that's shown on your screen. It's referred to as 4 and 6 Maple Alley. It is a 2-story duplex that sits on a very small lot, but it is a separate lot to the rear of the fire station. That lot is separated from the fire station lot by a 10-foot easement, an alleyway. It's a private alley. As part of this process, we have extinguished or vacated the portion of the alleyway that is directly behind the fire station. So that part of the process has been completed. That's all done. The alleyway is still in existence on either end. So off of Spruce Street and off of Pine Lane. It's just vacated in the middle, the piece that would bridge the fire company property and the Maple Alley property. So in order for us to create the patio space, we need to tear down the structure. And that's what brings us before you tonight, the conditional use for the demolition of the structure to the rear of the fire station. So we can, again, you guys have the submission, you have what we submitted in response to the conditional use items. I know that you have Elijah's letter, which also addresses those items. We can go through that as you guys see fit. Before we do that though, just there's 2 points that I want to make that I would ask you to consider as we're talking about this tonight. The first point is that we're an all-volunteer fire company. So having volunteers is the meat and potatoes of everything that we do, the service that we're able to deliver to the borough. And I know Karen did many years on Borough Council. You're well aware of the cost implications of what that means, the cost savings. And so all of that to say that it is a huge focus of ours in making sure that we have volunteer members to respond to the emergency calls. Dwayne Ober, the Warwick Emergency Services Fire Commissioner, just did his presentation last week or 2 weeks ago to the Borough Council, giving his 2022 year-end report. The Lititz Fire Company finished out 2022 with just over 400 emergency calls. So, and again, we did all of that with volunteers. So about a little bit over 3 years ago, we had a major kind of refocus, reorganization at the fire company, where we really put forth a massive effort on making sure that we were recruiting and retaining volunteer members. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into this. This project is part of that. We've done numerous improvements at the fire station, as well as many, many, many other things, and we've seen the benefits of that. Over the last 3+ years, we have seen the statistical trend of the increase in the number of volunteers, the increase in the number of volunteers that are coming to calls, like, you know, on an individual basis, as well as the overall participation in calls, training, all that other stuff. So while the patio itself is not going to make or break whether or not the volunteer fire company stays in existence, it is definitely a puzzle piece, a cog to the greater overall mission that we're trying to do. And we think that one of the biggest things that differentiates us from the typical presentations that you would have before you, and ones that I have been a part of as well on Planning Commission, is what we're presenting to you is very difficult. A lot of the questions have to deal with the financial value, the impact of, you know, those kind of things. What we're saying is all of this is about maintaining volunteerism. So when we start talking about, well, what's the financial impact? How much would that cost you? It would cost us an impact on what we do for our volunteers. So we don't necessarily know what that exact number is, but what we're saying is this is a crucial piece of the overall picture of what we're trying to do in maintaining the volunteers. So that's point number one. Point number two, one of the things that came up in the review through staff was the notion of the need for housing units in the borough. We absolutely recognize that, 100% are behind that, and you know, we've actually been beating that drum for a long time as well. I know Karen and I have had conversations that go back years on that topic. So while removing these 2 units, you know, may seem like a detriment, and I can't necessarily offset that by creating 2 other units, what I can tell you is that the fire company is very much invested in making sure that our volunteers are able to be in Lititz or within our fire district to be contributing members. So there's 2 things 2 programs that we have in place as it relates to housing. Number one, we have a program to assist our members in purchasing a house. So there's a whole list of criteria, a whole bunch of stuff that they have to do, and that's a whole nother presentation, but to summarize it, if they qualify, they are eligible for up to $10,000 towards the purchase of a house. So we are trying to make housing affordable as best we can to our members to make sure that we don't lose them, that they stay here. The other thing that we do is, in addition to this property, we own 3 other properties that finish out the West Main Street block. We own all those properties. We currently use them as rental units. Any of our members who are interested in living in those rental units can live there at a rental rate of 2/3 of whatever the market rate is. So that's step number one. Step number two then is we don't charge them any other expenses. So there's no security deposit, there's no first month's rent, they live there at 2/3 of whatever the market rate is, and we make that available to them for, you know, however long they want to be there. So currently there's 3 properties. Out of those 3 properties, there's a total of 6 units. Is that right? No, 5 units, I'm sorry. There's a total of 5 units. One of the units is rented by one of our members and his wife, and another one of the units will be rented by 2 of our members who are going to college in the fall, and they're both gonna live there. So again, we understand the housing, and we're doing our part, we believe, to make sure that we're, you know, helping our members to maintain that affordable housing. So I just wanted to make sure that I went over those 2 points because they were different things that came up in the staff review that kind of spoke to those. So with that, again, It's pretty simple, so I don't have a lot of song and dance, but I can answer any questions that you have. And if I can't answer them, hopefully I have the staff with me who can.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Microphone.
I did do mine. Mr. Smith,
Sir?
got it? Okay. Thoughts from the group? I'm not sure if we need to go down through it point by point like we've done for other conditional uses, because as Mike said, this is kind of a special circumstance. Elijah, is there anything particular you wanted to go over with your comments?
No, you have my comment letter. As I said, anytime we lose housing units, I think it's something to be looked at closely. On the other side, I think the fact that this property no longer has frontage is something that to be taken into consideration as well. If you can't access the property, then it's not too feasible to actually be a, habitable unit.
Because the alley was vacated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, the portion of the alley basically adjoining these two properties. My understanding, Mike, is that the remainder of the alley is used for the adjacent properties for their private use.
That's correct. So the alley is vacated up to the property line.
So people in that unit, if it were to stay, would have nowhere to park at all? Because don't they park in front of the unit right now in that alleyway, sort of right up against it?
That's correct.
So they'd have nowhere to park.
That's correct. But technically, they didn't have anywhere to park because they were illegally parking in the,
Right.
yeah, so.
So to be clear, the unit that faces Spruce and the unit that faces Maple, I guess it is, they still have access.
That's correct.
It's this one duplex.
That's correct.
Could everyone please speak closer into the mic? We're having some issues on Zoom.
Sorry, will do. So I'm not gonna go through my diatribe about demolition by neglect. I always applaud you for what you do to assist your members to have better living conditions, to be able to live closer to the fire station. And certainly, from a personal standpoint of view, and all of the years that I've spent in affordable housing nonprofits, I applaud your efforts to help members buy homes and to live at below market rates. It's incredibly important. I think you've done a really good job. I know from my years on council and even before that on this planning commission that you have tried to acquire the properties around you so that you had a buffer, and also that you could expand in the future if and when you needed to. It's an incredibly important thing that you've done. And so I applaud that as well. And I have nothing else. And if you guys all run out of here because I hear sirens. So I applaud you for what you're doing. I hate to see the units come down, but I totally understand the reasoning behind it, and I'm positive on it.
Thank you.
I have two thoughts that come to my head when I was looking at this, and one of it stems from the affordable housing and the comments that you made regarding the costs to improve the property and what you could possibly get as fair market value rents. I do know that rents are skyrocket everywhere. So I wonder the last time that you looked at that.
Just that we looked at it just the beginning of this year when we were
Just the
ready to
beginning of this year.
embark on this project. Yep.
Okay. Because my other thought was, it'll be awesome to have a patio like this. Is there not another room in the firehouse that could be made into this awesome rec space and save this problem?
There's actually not, believe me. Every space is filled, and we're already looking at other options for how we can, better utilize different spaces. And
Are there thoughts of actually expanding the building itself?
not at this time, only because the cost would just be astronomical. It would not. Right now we do not believe that would be the best use of our money. And it's the other thing with the volunteer fire company and the history of volunteers and what we do. This project will mostly be done by the volunteer firefighters. We're not crazy enough. I'll use the word crazy since it's being recorded. to actually tear the house down ourselves. So we will, properly, get a contractor in, do all, because they have to separate everything. And, but I mean, the actual, like work of the patio and that kind of stuff, like we will make use of as much talent as we can, just so that we can save the money.
Okay, I don't really have any other questions beyond that, just thoughts that came to my head, and I appreciate you expanding. And I also completely agree and echo Karen's comments about a great job the department's done overall.
Thank you.
For this community and managing the department and everything like that. So more volunteers is a good thing. And
Yeah.
we support that. So
Thank
thank
you.
you, Mike.
I forgot to start the recording, so
Recording in progress.
thank you for the reminder, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. You want me to start over?
I think you have enough witnesses that you're
Okay.
here doing it in public, and you have people online, so I don't think the recording is the crucial part, but since you reminded me, I figured I may as well record
We
this.
have video in the background, so we're good.
Mike, there's no historic value to the structure, right?
Well, I mean, I guess that's somewhat of a opinion based. I mean, we can tell you that the structure itself is a little over 100 years old, but there's nothing to the structure, inside the structure, or anything like that, that we would know as historical. It's not an old log building. There's no special, detailed wood carving of a Moravian settlement that's hanging on the wall. I mean, nothing like that. I mean, it is very nondescript. It's just a very small, basic duplex. I think each side is about 700 or so square feet. It's not big. So yeah, nothing that would stand out as historical other than the fact of its age.
It's a class 2, is it not? And
Yes.
Then there's nothing other than its age.
Very good. I think that's all I have. Any other comments from the group or Elijah?
Not for me.
Okay. Is there a motion on the conditional use demolition at 4 Maple Alley?
Sure. I move to recommend approval of the conditional use application for the demolition of 24 West Main Street to council.
Sorry.
For Maple Alley.
Oh, sorry, 4 Maple Alley. I was reading.
Yeah,
We are getting a comment
Correct.
from
4
Zoom.
Maple Alley, sorry. Yep.
It's Mary Gaddis, 27 South Cedar Street. I used to live in a property similar to this right around the corner on Spruce. It was a great home for a single person. The demolition of housing in the borough concerns me greatly. And while I understand that providing amenities for volunteers is important, I believe that housing is more important, and I would hope that this would not go forward.
Yep. Continue, thank you. Continue with my motion to recommend approval of the conditional use application for the demolition of 4 Maple Alley as submitted.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mike.
gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And ladies, because I know there's some ladies like that, in the scope of things, but we appreciate what you do every day, and in the middle of the night when you're out there and we're not. Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the electric vehicle charging ordinance.
Where's everybody going?
I would remind if there's anyone in the audience that wants to make some comment, to please keep comments to the agenda. I think we have a 3-minute time limit on those comments. Okay? Elijah, would you like to get into the ordinance a little bit?
Sure. There should be a draft out there. If anyone doesn't have a copy, we can get you a copy. It's also online on the website. So this was the draft that was provided to, it was approved by this body in December, went before council. Council held a hearing in February. We had several members that are in the audience here, both online and in person, that offered comments. So I guess maybe it would be good if some of those ones might come up, and then we can open up to other ones. Is there anyone that wants to volunteer to go first? Or I know a couple of them are in the online too. We can unmute you if possible.
Okay.
You know, Tom Eppinger, Lititz Springs, 200 Klein Street. It's just about the electric vehicle stations. Looking at the new draft that was published. Just one question to start. I know there was concern from the council that we had to move quickly on this because so private, like storefronts, don't start putting these in without a permit or permission. If we're gonna start putting these in, or if there's any question like a Giant or something, a supermarket, don't they have to come and make application to you and ask permission to put these in, or they can just do whatever they want?
I have to defer to the
With these, since there's nothing in the ordinance right now, it's basically treated as part of the building code, and that's why ones in the past have gone in. As you know, there's some at your apartment complex,
Yes.
there's some at the Wilbur Project, and that may be all in the actual borough, but at this point, there's not anything that precludes them from being installed.
I mean, you're using the national code, it's pretty large. Can you just reference to me what number it is?
I'm not the code inspector, so I don't have that
Okay.
readily available, but we do have third-party building inspectors that inspect those installations.
Okay, I'll
So
get
if I can back up, when we originally discussed this,
Mhm.
it had been brought to our attention that sidewalks were being crossed.
Okay, no, I
Okay,
understand
with
about the.
cabling, and that sends red flags off to us because of the various hazards involved with the public, for the general public.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Want to be about public safety. That's it. So another question, still, I don't understand, and I think that a lot of people were left with this. What is the screening to be installed around the electric vehicle station? What is that?
Tom, can you talk into the mic? The people on
Sorry.
Zoom can't hear you.
What is the screening installed to be around the electric vehicle station? What exactly is that?
Is that for a residence or for a commercial property? This would be your
An
concern.
electric vehicle, this is B4. An electric vehicle charging station may be installed at the front of a dwelling if the following apply. So I would imagine this is,
So that's residential.
Single family
yes.
residential.
So I don't know if this is on the easement or on the property. Screening is installed around the electric vehicle station. What is that? What is the screening?
I believe you'd have to check our borough definition of screening.
It's a visual break. It can be architectural. It could be planting. If there's the suggestions that were made by Dave Bucher that were sent, they're included at the end of the ordinance.
Oh yeah,
He's suggesting to just have that removed.
I concur. This is, letter C, number 7, installation of electric vehicle charging station shall require a parking area to be screened from public streets. So, if it's gonna go into a station, which could be like a apartment building, or a store or whatever, is also screening, or are you gonna want it visible?
This is requiring screening of the parking lot. The ordinance has requirements for screening the parking lot anyway, but if they install stations, it would require that parking lot to be screened.
Then that's in the national ordinance?
No, that's in our zoning ordinance. Our zoning ordinance has standards to screen a parking lot.
Park? Do you have an example of that? Like what place around here would have that?
I think the deck at the Wilbur is an example where you have kind of a lower wall in part of it going onto that parking deck.
Okay.
There's other examples that you have, hedges and things like that.
Okay. And again, the electric station, if it's private, why is it still 93 months? If it's private, shouldn't we if it's got a problem, go back to 60 days? I know we spoke about that, 30 days. I know it might be hard to get a contractor. Instead of having it 3 months, have it 2 months?
Excuse me, where are you?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Section 324. It's the last page. the top, number 7.
Thank you.
No problem. Sorry. All right. The 20% non-residential, okay. Right now, I'll tell you, I live at the Lititz Springs apartment buildings. 2 chargers, 4 plugs. They're not being used. Maybe once in a while, we don't know who the person is because they advertise public charging, and our neighbors don't like that. I know it's in here in the ordinance. They put that sign up because they were making no money off of it. I understand that, but 20%'s a lot. Don't you think so for the amount of cars that we have in Lititz that are not electric? I really don't see the usage to put 20% of a parking lot. That's a lot. Don't you think that's I think that's overkill. You know. What's the other thing? Public garages. Now we really only have one that I know. It's the Wilbur second, the lower level. Now I did call the Wilbur Hotel. They only have one. Now this is a place, you know, I think if anywhere they should go, it should be where people are traveling. I know the Wilbur has a parking lot, and Lititz Springs Inn has a parking lot. And we have apartment buildings. I've been like to the restaurants behind there. They have parking lots. That would be, I think, where they belong. Supermarkets and places like that, I really don't see the necessity, and I think we could end up with a problem. Now, just going back to the parking garage, I don't have, at the Wilbur, I don't have access to it. It's private property. I'm not just gonna wander in there. But you know, the problem is we don't have a lot of fires that have happened in garages. There's a concern, I know they're writing about this in the National Fire Protection Association, and they reference only 2 garages. One is in Liverpool and one was in Norway. They had bad fires. And I know coming from this New York City, parking is a big thing. And the way they jam the cars in are crazy. They have lifts. They get these guys to put the cars on top of each other. There are some parking garages that have plugs. The cars are separated, you know, in case there's a fire. But you know, the concern I have is especially like at the downstairs, the 48 they call it. That parking lot is packed. I don't know. Do they have sprinkler system under there, Chief?
What I'm trying to understand what's your concern here?
No, it's just my concern is here's your last. It was proposed public garages may install electric vehicle charging stations at any number of spaces. We only have. It's not even a public garage.
Right, so that
Do we
wouldn't.
have a public garage?
We do not. So if it is ever built in the future, if someone wants to build a parking garage and put 50% of their spaces, then that's up to them based on the market.
Okay,
But we don't have a public parking garage currently in the borough.
I hope not. But how would you handle that? Would you? I imagine you're going to have an architect. Okay, that's it. So this was a big education. We do have electric. I know. I understand people pulling the cords over the sidewalks. I get that. I think it's, you know, a homeowner is a homeowner. He wants to do what he wants to do. We don't want to stop him, but we want to make sure it's done right. My comment at the council meeting was that what's happening back home is that we have a lot of problems with electricity and gas, people jerry-rigging, not using professionals. And what happens is the electricians know they got you, permits, everything, and you're gonna pay a lot of money. So the fires they're seeing are improperly installed units in the garage. And once that car takes off, there's a huge problem. But if it's installed properly, there should be no problem.
Mr. Eppinger, right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to understand, are you, like, you don't want to see any EV chargers? Is that your
no,
stance?
I don't, no.
I just want to make sure that I have understanding of what you're I can't figure out if you're opposed to the ordinance or if you're
Do
in
you think I'm
support of
opposed
the
to it?
ordinance.
No, I think you're opposed to the screening, section. of
No,
the
I'm just
ordinance.
asking questions because we went through this at the council meeting
Mhm.
and there were no answers, and I'm trying to ask them again. They were supposed to be here for tonight's meeting. That's what we discussed at the meeting on the last council meeting. We weren't clear about screening. One of the councils made a big deal about an outside plug with just a regular plug. We've gotten down to the meats of, I'm not against it. People are gonna put things in their house. What I'm against is just throwing them up haphazardly in parking lots. Do we really see a need for that now? You know, I didn't think this town would do this. I don't see this happening.
So
And I don't see the need for it. So, Chief, I'm against putting him in a public lot. Residential, I don't have a problem. That's the homeowner, that's between the borough and whoever the inspector is. And we make sure it's done right so we don't have any public safety issues.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Like, that definitely gives me a better understanding. And I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn, if this is not appropriate, but I just want to make sure you understand that this ordinance doesn't mean that they need to be installed in public places. This ordinance simply creates the framework that if I owned a grocery store and I, as the owner of the grocery store, wanted to put in EV chargers, which is that, like, it's my grocery store,
Yes.
my parking lot, this ordinance now creates the framework from which I would have to work to put in those. Whereas today, there is no ordinance, so I own the grocery store and I'm like, you know what? I hate combustion engines. I only want to serve customers with EV. I'm putting an EV charger at every spot.
Chief, I understand that, but let me just ask you, could you put in the ordinance that they're not allowed in public parking?
I don't think you can, Elijah. You can speak to the NPC, but I mean, I think that's, as a borough, we cannot prohibit, I mean, this gets
I don't know
this
if-
gets into zoning
I
regulations.
asked
and we-
Elijah, has an attorney looked at this? Has an attorney written this? Because one question that I brought up to the council was, on private land like where I live, if we put up the no charging, for people coming into the public and you accept a federal grant, does that now make that a public access?
No.
You know.
All of these drafts are always sent to our solicitor for review.
Okay,
There is nothing that is enacted
okay,
into any code or ordinance or the zoning ordinance that has not been reviewed by our solicitor.
okay.
So you can be assured of that, okay?
Okay.
So we're not gonna be infringing on somebody's personal property rights, public
I-
property rights, but we do need to make sure that the public is protected
Mhm.
when they're walking down the sidewalk and somebody doesn't have their charging
I
cable.
totally get that.
Yeah, so that's really what this is about. I think, if you look at, on the last page at, D1A, it says up to 20% of parking spaces are allowed to be served by EV stations, up to 20%.
Yes,
So
up
it's
to.
not, you must have 20%.
I read that.
It's up to.
Up to.
And you're absolutely right, you're not seeing a lot of EVs in town. And you're not, I mean, they may be passing through and they may be parked on the street. But in terms of walking the residential areas, you don't see a lot of EVs. I have some pictures that Elisha's gonna throw up soon, which is where I live, which is on the north end of town, and we're primarily very old homes.
Mhm.
My home was built in the 1880s, the houses across the street from me were built in the 1911s, like, the lot sizes and the way our particular homes and barns and garages were built, we have no setback off the sidewalk. I mean, really, it makes this, it makes a lot of what's in, section B here, which is for single-family residences.
You have a unique, way of building here in this state. I've never seen houses so close, double, it's interesting.
Makes my job easy, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
but-
you don't-
But my
yeah, you
point
just put up a
is
handle.
that if you look at subsection B, it
Yeah.
makes having an EV in my neck of the woods really almost
Yeah,
impossible.
that was the only question, like, let me just,
So, because I have a suggestion coming up that says we
because
should
there's,
strangle
someone
on
wrote
this.
25 feet, I don't know if Dave put that in, but there's people with no property.
Right, see,
So
now
how are you
that's a
gonna accommodate
suburban,
them?
so when I read this as a planning commissioner, I can say to you, the basis of this was
Yeah.
written by a town or township that is primarily suburban since the mid-50s.
Mhm.
Because that's the building pattern,
Mm-hmm,
okay, of residential areas from then forward.
Yeah.
It is not the building pattern of Lidditz from 1756.
No, no.
All right, so we just need to do a little bit of work on this so that people can do what they need to do.
I
And
agree.
we respect their property.
And we wanna let people be free with what they buy.
Yeah.
That's it, thank you very much.
You bet, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Karen, request to talk into the mic. It was kind of hard for you
I'm
to
sorry,
hear you.
I'm sorry. I have the loudest voice in the room.
I know.
I'm so sorry.
And then let me just check. I was trying to take notes and talk at the same time, but there's a woman that's on the chat that has quite a few comments. I want to see if she wants to unmute and share them. Too many people are direct messaging me. This might be your neighbor, actually, Karen, I believe.
I can't read that screen from here.
I can.
It looks like you're unmuted right now, Jennifer,
I appear to be currently unmuted.
and we can hear you.
So, you can or you can't?
We can.
We can.
Okay, so Karen recently told me about this ordinance. So I just want to make sure that we are, as private owners of property here, allowed to have our EV charger at our house. I have a charger I installed at least a year ago, and I recently purchased a quite expensive vehicle, and I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to charge my car at my house. I was looking at the ordinances and I was looking at some of the recommendations that were put in, and there was, and I put this in the comments, there was one recommendation that the EV charging should be 25 feet away from a public right of way. My garage backs a road, and the garages are right on top of the road. You know, it's like a narrow road. My charger, like, I can't get my charger 25 feet away. There's no place that's 25 feet away from the road. So I hope that's something that is not considered. And as far as EVs in public areas, this is something that is going to attract visitors and tourism into the area. And a lot of places are putting in, when they put in EV charging stations, they're putting in 1 or 2 EV charging stations. The Giant in Newport, for example, has 2 EV chargers. Shady Maple has 2 chargers. Same thing at the Tanger outlets, they have 2 chargers. This is not something that, you know, is gonna take over a parking lot. It's too expensive to do that. Hershey Park, they have 2 EV chargers. It's just something that a lot of people are buying these cars. There are a lot of companies that are now manufacturing them, and chances are it's gonna bring in more affluent people into the area who have money to spend in the local businesses. And I just think that, you know, we need to embrace the future with this.
Any other questions?
Excuse me?
I was asking the board if they had any other questions for you.
No, thank you, Jennifer. I think we were just discussing the 25-foot setback, and as Karen was saying, this was kind of developed for a suburban situation. We'll have to kind of reevaluate that in light of
So,
urban
like I said,
conditions.
my concern is that I'm allowed to have my charger that I put in before any of this was done, and it's out of the road, it's on my own private property, my house, my car is parked off of the public property, next to my garage. And I just wanna make sure that I will be able to charge my car, because otherwise it's a useless brick. and I just hope that it doesn't become the case.
And Jennifer, as I shared with you a little earlier, anytime there's a zoning ordinance amendment, it doesn't work retroactively unless you change something. So even if I don't think anyone here wants to totally ban all AVs everywhere. Even if they did, you would still be grandfathered in because of how the law works.
Okay, and what about this 25-foot suggestion that was in the email that you sent?
And that was the comments, written comments from another person that made comments at the council meeting that couldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
So that was shared. That has not been incorporated into this, and we're really at the discussion point still.
Okay, and also, what about the idea, because I was trying to follow the discussion about the decorative covering, or what is the expectation as far as what, like, can I have my EV charger sitting there? I don't know what kind of covering I'm gonna have for this.
The reason that was approached is because there's essentially, like, for gas infrastructure, things like that, new stuff, that there's a screening requirement. It's, it is up to the commission if they would like to strike that. But based on some of the feedback we've received, it seems like that is something that more than a few people have brought up.
Okay, because that could be very difficult, and I think that would be a fire hazard for something like this. So I think that's a safety issue.
Jennifer, this is Mike Smith on the Planning Commission. Can you just describe what your electric vehicle charging station looks like? Is it an actual station?
No. First of all, I have a NEMA 1450 outlet, and then I have this thing called a juice box, and it comes off. Like when I'm not charging my car, like this thing comes off and it goes to my garage. So it's not something that necessarily needs to stay there. It's, I don't know, maybe about 8 inches by like 5 inches. I don't know how big the thing is, and it has the charging cable.
Yeah, Jennifer, this is Karen. We're gonna try to throw up those pictures I took of your barn.
My email's
Okay,
not liking me on
I'm
this
sorry, I
one.
can't hear you.
I'm sorry, we're gonna try to throw up the pictures on the screen of, I don't know if I have this on my phone, guys, I will look.
I have it on
mine,
but
I have my charger with me, if we can.
What I think, yeah, I think one of the things that I'm trying to understand, and I think some of the confusion possibly is this definition or the semantics of a charging station versus outlets that have cords plugged into them. I believe the intent of the ordinance when we first started looking at this months ago was the idea that there wouldn't be this structure. That's what I think we were trying to prevent against. And admittedly, I mean, this is all great dialogue, because sometimes, you just don't realize what you don't know. And I think as we're learning this, there's definitely a big difference between this charging station, using those specific words, which is a structure, some type of 3-dimensional being, as opposed to just an outlet that we plug a cord into that then goes to your car.
The structure is necessary, because I'll just give you an example with Tesla. Tesla has a wall charger, and the Tesla wall charger is going to charge the car about 50. This is not what I own, but I'm just letting you know that the Tesla wall charger is going to charge a car 50% faster than plugging into a NEMA 1450 outlet. So someone who is buying a Tesla is going to want to buy a Tesla charging station. It's not a charging station like if you were going to a supercharger. It's it's a much smaller thing, but it's going to increase the charging speed by 50%. And someone who owns an electric vehicle as their primary vehicle is going to want to have a charging station. So I'm not plugging, like, my charging station, which is it's not this gigantic thing, but it plugs into the NEMA 1450 outlets. If I were to plug my car directly into the NEMA 1450 outlet, it's not going to charge as fast, and that's a problem for people who own these cars and use them as a primary transportation.
So in a lot of ways, are we talking about the difference between a permanently installed charging station, quote unquote charging station,
Mine
versus-
comes off. Okay, I personally have one that can be taken off of my garage. But I'm saying for people in the borough who have a Tesla charger that they want to put on the side of their house, like this is, I'm not in this position, but I don't believe that comes off. That's something that would be permanent, and it's not a big thing, but it is gonna charge their car 50% faster.
Right, so I
So I
just,
don't think that's so I'm concerned for people who are gonna wanna buy these cars and have a charging station on the side of their garage, which is a typical location that people put these things.
right, so what we're looking at, Jen, from my point of view, and I'm sorry the audience can't see this picture that I have of Jen's charger on the side of her barn, but basically what we're looking at is we're looking at an electrical box that's pretty much the size of what you have on your AC unit, your outdoor AC unit. And then you have a small box where the plug of the car goes in. So it's not a large scenario at all. When we talk about charging stations, I think then you're probably thinking about the contraptions you see on, you know, on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and on 95 when you pull off at
Yeah, you
McDonald's.
can't buy
and-
those. Like,
Yeah.
that's not something that individual homeowners would buy. The
Correct.
only thing they would have would be the small thing like I have, or one branded by
Right.
Tesla.
So really what you're looking at is you're looking at boxes either on the side of somebody's house or on the side of somebody's garage that is really not much bigger than, I'm gonna say, 8 by 8.
Yeah, and I think that's, so I had a thought there, and I'm probably gonna really mess things up here, but, I mean, you know, Karen gives that, you know, maybe it's 8 by 8, and I'm not gonna hold you to that, but, I mean, is that one possible option that's similar to a sign ordinance in the zoning ordinance where it's like, okay, you know, as long as the charger doesn't exceed X cubic feet, then, you know, so that we make sure that, okay, it's a residential scale as opposed to something that's out on the turnpike. And I don't know, I mean, believe me, I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head right now, but as we deal with ordinances all the time, we're very familiar with the sign ordinance. I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, Jennifer, and I think it is definitely something we want to make sure that we wrap our minds around and properly address in this ordinance. I think what you've brought up is excellent points and extremely reasonable.
So
Thank you.
I do have an idea on this, only because I spent a lot of yesterday walking around my neighborhood and trying to figure out where these things would go, and then I looked at my property, which is on a corner, and I have no setback even from my garage, and I don't know what the heck I would do if my husband ever went like crazy and said, "You have to have an EV." So my suggestion is this, and this is only would apply to the single-family residential scenario under subsection B, which is we keep item 1, which is that they're all considered use by right. That we replace B2 with Dave Bucher's comment, which is only level 1 or level 2 chargers may be installed on residential properties. That gets that whole highway thing out of there, okay? We delete item 3 and replace it with no more than 2 such chargers may be installed on an individual residential property. That means you could spread them around. You don't have to have them side by side, okay? You could have one in a garage, you could have one on the side of a home. You could do whatever your property will allow, because we know the variance of properties in this town. I mean, our residential properties span 300 years. So we're never gonna get a one-size-fits-all in the single-family residential. I think we ought to get rid of 4 in its entirety. I think we ought to get rid of item 5 in its entirety. And I think we ought to keep 6 and 7, which basically have to do with the fact that you should have permits, and if you abandon the item, then you need to take it out. I think that makes a reasonable expectation that a residential owner has to step up to the plate and think about this. I think it makes a reasonable expectation that we are trying to protect the neighborhood. In my neck of the woods, houses have 3 feet in between them, so this is significant. This is not out in the burbs where Kyle lives, where there's a lot of room in between houses. I mean, you know, half of this room lives in an old neighborhood where the houses are up next to each other. So the fire scenario, while I do not think the percentage of EV fires is significant compared to the number of EVs on the road. We do know, and God knows in East Earl, we just had it in our face, when an EV battery goes off, it's a big deal. And it's not just gonna be the guys from Local 1 coming to put that fire out. It's all hands on deck from across the county. Hazmat, it's a big deal. So I think we can rewrite that section. Personally, my ideas are that the other sections are all right, but I think this residential section needs to be really rewritten and looked at within the context of the built environment.
Thank you, Karen. I have some other thoughts, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the group first.
Move this closer to the table.
Could you state your name and?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Chris Strayer, Front Street. Couple things I want to mention. First and foremost, Elijah, I'll be getting you a new microphone so we can.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
make
you.
myself a note and we'll have that dropped off so you don't have to talk into this like you're a singer. The other thing I want to mention is that despite what certain citizens in this town might think, I am very much not in favor of a bunch of ordinances. So I am here to give you information, but I also can respect the fact that I don't think this borough should overflow with ordinances. And in fact, I know Elijah was at a meeting once for the council where I stood up and was pretty adamant that we were going overboard at times. And so I tend to be a minimalist when it comes to this stuff. And I also, I think that's it. So I brought with me an EV charger. This is my charger. And this is pretty much what Karen was talking about. This is the charger. And then this is the head of it that plugs in. It is not very large. The charger is, I say it's similar size typically as a transformer for low voltage lighting that you might put in. And then it's no different hanging up somewhere like a garden hose. So it really does not, from my vantage point, require screening. This charger that came with my vehicle is a level 1 charger. This charger will take my vehicle about a week to charge if I'm on dead. When I plug this in, this is now a level 2 charger. This charger now will take my vehicle about 12 hours to charge. This is really what we're talking about here. This is what the common folk is buying. The level 3 chargers, something that's drawing more like 200, 300, and 400 amps, that's not what someone's gonna put in their garage. Most people don't even have that service to their house. So I don't even think that's an issue. This is really what we're talking about here. And the reality of it is if I'm not mistaken, Elijah, you can correct me, the ordinance is written in such now that if you're plugging it in, it doesn't actually really affect you. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
And so I feel like we have a lot of people that are getting very worked up about something that does not affect them, myself included, because as long as I'm plugging it in, whether it's my 50 amp plug or my 20 amp plug, I'm fine. As long as I have put the plug in or the plug was put in, by an electrician previously, permits and so on. But again, I think we're all getting worked up about something that doesn't need worked up. Only other thing I want to point out that I showed this to Elijah before, and I think it's important for people to understand. This is also a charger. This would be considered a level 1 charger. But what's really different about this particular charger is this charger is actually meant for a hybrid vehicle. There's a lot of hybrid vehicles in the borough. That is the most common electric vehicle you will see. I'm not saying people in the borough don't have electric vehicles. Obviously I have one, obviously someone else testified. But also keep in mind with your definitions, it's not just EV, it's hybrids. Anything that's being charged, whether it's electric or combination, is what we're really discussing here. I commend the borough for making an effort, but again, I think minimalist is best. And I think we need to also be thinking long-term and not short-term. So while I can appreciate the need to, not put a lot of chargers in the borough, the reality of it is I don't need a charger in the borough. I live in the borough. But if I go Ocean City, Maryland, I need a charger. So if someone from Ocean City, Maryland comes to Lidditz, they need a charger. And if that's in, if that's in the parking lot at Wise Market, if that's in the parking lot wherever, it doesn't really affect us. It's our guests that need those chargers, and that's what we're talking about when it comes to the other chargers. And those chargers, I think, is also what we're talking about when it comes to setbacks, when it comes back to screening and all those other things. Again, I think we're going off on rabbit trails that don't affect most of us. Any questions? Also, sorry I didn't come up first. Might have been home watching TV already.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's helpful.
I appreciate it.
We should definitely amend the text to say hybrid/electric.
I think
If we haven't already.
Chris did provide a couple comments, and I think as I approached it with the definition,
An electric vehicle.
transfer electric energy from an electrical source to a battery or other energy storage device that serves an electric or plug-in hybrid vehicle.
Yeah, I'm the last
Now-
person.
I want to say actually two more things I just thought of, and then I will sit down unless you have questions. I think the idea of limiting how many chargers someone can put on their property probably doesn't make sense long term. You will eventually be changing that. The reality of it is do you have a kid that drives now, Mike? Oh, see, Mike has two kids that drive, and I assume your wife is still driving. And so, there are a lot of residents that have multiple cars. Most residents, I'm 100% sure, do not have multiple electric vehicles. I can tell you the only reason we can get away with electric vehicle is because we have a vehicle that's gas. It's just the systems are not in place for you to go very far. But in time, whether that's 5 years or 10 years, the borough will be amending that because, like it or not, that's the direction we are currently headed. And then the other thought I had, which slipped my mind, I do think, and whether it's in this amendment or whether it's down the road, I do think there needs to be some thought process about what are we going to do for the residents who don't have off-street parking, who don't have an option. Unfortunately, that's going to have to be addressed. And I know that is not something we're going to solve tonight. I don't think we should try to solve tonight, but that's something we need to be thinking about because we all know there are residents, there may or may not be an emergency vehicle in the borough that has a cord across the sidewalk, and we have to figure out how we can provide that capability for those people. Whether that's a approved ADA ramp, I don't know. Not sure that ADA ramps down all the sidewalks would be cool unless you're riding your bicycle and 10 again. Sorry, did you have a question, Kyle?
I was just gonna get at your point, like, what if you plug in your driveway, snake the cord across the sidewalk, and if your car parked on the street? And that's what we're trying to address here. I don't know that we have the perfect or good or best answer, but that's what we've kind of been seeing.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I think, like, again, I know of two vehicles that have the cord across the sidewalk, and in our industry, I can tell them where they can get themselves an ADA ramp, but I also don't think that's what we want to see in the borough long term. I also don't think the borough needs to blaze that trail, though. I think putting chargers in the right-of-way is, let's let someone else blaze that trail and figure out how to follow behind them and figure out what did or didn't work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jason Burkholder. I live on 37 East Lincoln. Clarification question. The commenter on Zoom said about the 25-foot within the right-of-way. Is it an accurate statement to say those are in that's only in the written suggestion by the gentleman? That's not actually in your draft ordinance.
Correct.
The 25-foot thing was not something you proposed. It was something someone suggested. Also accurate, is it an accurate statement to say the only public parking the borough has is street parking? There is no public lot. So every existing lot within the borough that could have EV chargers installed are privately owned. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct.
Excuse me, no. What about Water Street?
Water Street isn't owned by the borough, it's owned by Norfolk Southern. It's leased. So at this
Thank
point,
you.
we don't own any parking
Thank you.
lots. And we would have to go through Norfolk Southern to install it, and that is not something I even remotely want to attempt at this point.
That was just clarification, because the
Thank
comments about commercial,
Sure.
it's just on-street parking that is owned by the borough. And to the point, I think, of yourself or someone on screen, you do see them popping up at the grocery store. I was just up the other day in the Annville, Cleona area. There's a giant up there that has an electrical vehicle charging station right in front of it. And to Chris's point about people owning electric vehicles, it's not an area one would deem that would be flooded with electric vehicles, but they are for, visitors, so to speak. So I do think that the ordinance talking about the potential for commercial installation up to and regulating, limiting that number is sensible. Also, if a commercial lot for a private business eliminates 50% of its parking, that no gas-powered vehicles can park in, again, to agree with Chris's point, we're not there yet. So I do think that it is contemplating the future with some of that stuff. I mean, the residential portions, in my opinion, I think installing them in a way that they are accessible, from a driveway or private parking. I have sold properties in the borough. I'm a real estate agent that have electric chargers already installed, so you can access them from the driveway. So they are definitely here.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Mr. Strayer? I'm pretty sure I understand everything that you went over with us, but I want to make sure that I do. Would it be reasonable to say that this ordinance only needs to address the type 3, or what is it? What do they call it?
Yeah,
Type
level 3.
Level 3. So if the ordinance was amended to say level 3 EV chargers and then list everything, do you even have to break it down by residential, commercial? Because if it's if you're a residential property and you somehow figure out how to put in a level 3, somehow figure out how to get power to supply a level 3, then guess what? You're gonna have to abide by these regulations.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make sure that, if it's a level 1 or level 2 based on what you've shown us tonight, even if I had a grocery store and I had a level 1 charger out back at the grocery store, what's the big deal?
The only thing I will point out is there are level 2 commercial chargers.
That's it.
That would be like a standalone kiosk type?
It would be a standalone kiosk type, so those do exist. I think I would go more down the path of commercial versus residential. I think that's the distinctive that I would make, not necessarily the level. I made, maybe I shouldn't say the mistake, but I drove to Ocean City, Maryland, and I got down there no problem. I had about 10 miles of charge left, which was fine, and plugged it into the level 2 charger where I was at, not my house, but a friend's house. And it wasn't done when we were ready to leave. We just had to go down and take care of some stuff at another friend's house. And so regardless, we thought, well, we'll drive north and we'll find a charger somewhere. They're hard to come by. Like I said, the East Coast is not there. We're not ready for it. But I did find some on the way back, but I wasn't willing to sit there for 12 hours to charge. So they do exist. So I think I would encourage you to differentiate between residential and commercial. And also just my own search, when I went to where unfortunately most people shop, when I went to Amazon and you start looking at chargers, most every charger, 95% of them, in fact, it's hard to find them, are the plug-in style chargers that most everybody's gonna buy. So that level 3 charger, they're, like you said, you're going to a huge extent to put a level 3 charger at your own property.
So does the differentiation then become whether or not it is a standalone kiosk as opposed to a plug-in? I guess I'm just trying to.
Well, and I think that's where the ordinance started to get cleaned up a little bit, but I think there was too much confusion already in the borough about it. So again, the female, Karen's neighbor who addressed us, she's all concerned about her charger, but actually according to the ordinance, her charger, regardless of whether she would have been grandfathered in, it didn't matter. She plugs it in, so it actually didn't matter.
Because it's not a standalone.
Because it's not a
kiosk.
standalone kiosk. And so again, if you have a receptacle out at your lamppost at the end of your driveway and you want to plug in, you can do that. Now, the thing that the borough needs to start thinking about is, what are we doing about the cords across the sidewalk? And that, again, I don't think we're going to fix tonight.
And that's what precipitated this entire discussion.
Well, that guy went a little further.
Was,
He went under the sidewalk
well,
and
he
put
had
a
one that
birdhouse.
went over and he had a
Oh,
really
yeah.
sleazy kind
He did a
of
good job.
plywood over
Yeah.
it, and it was a little,
He
it's
tried.
a little messy.
Yeah. And again, I know there are some residents that are frustrated with the borough's process about doing this because they feel like, hey, unless you have this done right, let's not even do it. But again, what I don't think they always understand is right now we have nothing. And so anybody can do anything. And so if Joe Schmo, whoever, if Keller Brothers tomorrow decides, hey, we're going to pull an electrical permit and we're going to put in a charging parking lot, they can do that because there's no ordinance to do that. This technology is so new and changing so fast that the borough will be changing this. Maybe not every year, but potentially every year for 5, 6+ years to come, because things are going to continue to change and evolve. And again, there's going to be people who need it on off-street parking, and it's a big thing to tackle. But you got to start somewhere. I agree. You can't leave it like with nothing.
Thank you.
Other comments from the people in attendance? Or
Let me
from
check
the
them.
Zoom chat?
We have one hand up. It's Christine. I'm gonna ask to unmute. Okay, Christine?
Thank you, Elijah. Yeah, thank you, Elijah. This is Christine Sensnick. I just had a question for my education. Is the port on the electric vehicle itself universal, such as a gas tank filling? Can any electric vehicle go up to any charging station?
No, there's a
and plug in, or
proprietary.
are you carrying your plug around with you in your car?
Chris is shaking his head no. There is at least 2 adapters, if not, there was a third one that wasn't carried forward. They're trying to get to a universal, but I think Tesla is the standalone, different one. Chris is shaking his head yes.
Christine, this is
Okay.
Karen.
Thank you.
If you're on 95 and you pull off onto any restaurant stop, there is a minimum of 3 various styles of plugins. It's bizarre that this is not standardized, but it is not.
Yeah, it's Christine, it's Chris talking again. It's definitely not standardized, and Tesla has the majority of the chargers, but the problem with the Tesla network is that they have it as a proprietary network. And so what happened when I was coming from Ocean City back up, I could find myself a Tesla charger pretty easily, but I can't charge on it because I'm not a part of the Tesla network. So when you have a Tesla and you plug into the Tesla network chargers, they know it's your car, they charge your credit card accordingly. But because I drive a Ford, I don't have the adapter and I can't plug in, and then I'm stuck. I'm looking for a charger somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. And while you're there, Chris, the charging stations that are, for example, at the Giant and some of these other locations, are they charging you?
Yes, most charging stations charge you. The only one I know of local that does not charge you is Rockledge Hotel. And Rockledge Hotel has 2 different charging options. I think they have 2, I think they might have 3 Teslas and 2 that are non-Tesla. They work with the Fords. I don't know what the other people do. I guess they bring an adapter.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or folks that wanna come up and say a few words?
No comments on Zoom.
Okay. Are we looking for a motion today? Elijah, or do we still have more discussion to do it?
Oh, Jennifer has some more comments on Zoom. Let me unmute her.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to mention that Tesla is, I don't think this makes a difference to anything, but Tesla is opening its charging network this year to other vehicles. And there are about 3 different standards. Tesla is one of them. The one that's at most of the charging stations requires a J1772 connector, which the majority of non-Tesla cars are going to have, or if you have a Tesla, you have an adapter for it. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, like, we have a juice box charger, so I don't plug my car directly into the NEMA 1450. And I attached a link in the chat where you could see the size of the charger and what it looks like. So those are what the chargers typically look like and the size. And that's it. Thank you.
I'll call that up. Let me share screen.
Yeah. I have some thoughts. Any thoughts from the rest of the planning commission or members of the audience for it? Nice. Okay. Thank you everyone for your comments. I think they're all much appreciated. I think this is a good discussion. I think this is the first electric vehicle ordinance in the county, is it not? So we're kind of, I think I saw it in the paper, so we're kind of all learning a little bit together here. My thought with this is that this doesn't address any of the cords across the sidewalk thing at all, which, I mean, Weiss could put in a bank of outlets and have people snake cords across them and parallel park there if they wanted to. I mean, is there something in general that addresses tripping hazards or something that would cover that?
That's ADA, and you
Okay,
can't
so
impede
ADA.
upon the ADA.
Okay, so that's kind of covered. I'm thinking that, I don't know that we need to regulate something as small as what Chris is bringing in. It's an electrical outlet and it's a little charger. I mean, that's totally different than what we're talking about here. So I like Mike's comment about this there being a size requirement, like is it, 2x4, then you have to do screenings and setbacks or something of that nature.
And that's actually the definition, basically specifies that plug-in component. Because
Okay.
Chris brought up a very good comment, which was, hey, are you gonna look at every outdoor outlet as one of these things? And I said to Lori, hey, Lori, do you wanna treat every one of these? She's like, absolutely not.
No.
And so if you can't, if it's something that literally plugs into an outdoor outlet, so long as that outlet's inspected, it's fine. So based on Chris's comments, that's kind of what we went for from a practical standpoint. And that's how it stands now as part of this ordinance. If we can change that, we can make it clear that it's only going to apply to XYZ. It also depends on, at that rate, do we want to just strike the residential component entirely and then just really regulate how many of these can be converted from a parking standpoint, which I think seems to be the main point of concern. And personally, I would not like to see someone buy a lot and change it into a full charging line. I don't think that's going to happen in the next 5 years, but at some point that might be, and there's places for that, and probably not in the middle of downtown, in my own personal opinion. Go ahead, Jason.
Question, so was the goal of bringing this back to planning tonight for us to take all of the public input that came from the other meeting, the council meeting, from everybody tonight, and then between now and our next meeting, work this again and rewrite, and then at our next meeting, look at the revised ordinance and consider making a motion to approve its approval or suggest its approval to council? Is that what we're looking to do?
I think that's a fine approach. Shane said April at the council meeting, and in follow up with Shane, he's like, it doesn't need to be in April. This is not something that they're beating down our doors. We had the one that popped up. It
Right.
luckily got removed. So it's really but I think it's good to have this dialogue. It's good to have this discussion. So it's
100%.
whenever the commission's happy with it to move forward. As you know, we don't always meet every month. We can meet every month to discuss this if we'd like to. So,
Steve, what are your thoughts on timing of?
Yeah, I concur with that. I mean, there's no urgency. We want to get it right, and there's a lot of things that were shared tonight that were not discussed at the council meeting. So There's no rush. Let's get it right. If it takes you guys multiple meetings, let's get the feedback you're receiving tonight from others. And it was evident tonight, a lot of people are learning new things about it tonight. There's probably something else you'll learn next month and the following month, so take some time to get it right.
Agreed. Cool.
Okay, I'll put it on the agenda for next month.
So I think we're going to continue discussion of the electric vehicle charging ordinance and have those ongoing discussions in the next couple of meetings. We're not looking for a motion today on that. That's all for that particular item. Next up is the Commissioners Forum.
And the first item is actually a request from one of the people in Zoom, so I'll see if she wants to unmute and make it, or else I can reiterate. Well, she doesn't seem to be getting my unmute request, so, oh, there she is.
I'm sorry, what was?
Sorry, the request for the release of minutes, draft minutes, upon request.
Yes. So hi, everybody, Mary Gaddis here. Just asking if you would consider releasing draft minutes, in the instance that you don't meet and council is considering something that you have acted on or reviewed, so that the public is aware of what your discussion has been, your recommendations and so forth. Just would appreciate having access to your thought process and any recommendations or decisions that you've made before things go to council.
So Elijah, the way that this currently works is tonight we approve the December 6th Planning Commission minutes. So after tonight, the December 6th minutes will be quote unquote released or official.
Correct, I would put those on the website. So typically our policy has been we don't release draft minutes. They do go to council and council can act upon your recommendation based on those minutes. But at that point, the board has not reconvened to officially endorse it. So Mary asked me this. I don't have any issue because council's acting on those recommendations anyway. I don't know if I think it needs to be clear if we're putting on the website that this is definitely draft, or make it available upon request. But before I took that action, I wanted to bring it before you for consideration.
So I don't see this as a major problem because your minutes have been accurate. However, it does not give commission members a chance to either amend the minutes or to say you got this wrong before they're approved. So generally when council gets minutes, a lot of times they'll get just a section that's pertinent to their agenda for the evening. But I think it kind of goes against the grain to have minutes out there that have not been reviewed and accepted by the Planning Commission. I would have felt the same way when I was on council, by the way. So I take those few decades forward.
Could we release them upon request and put some kind of big draft watermark and, not for public use, some legalese on it, for personal use only, something like that?
No.
Or no?
Well, I think once you release them,
Okay.
in this day and age, once you release, they're out there.
They're
Okay.
It's there. Steve, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, the primary issue that Mary brought up last month was because, again, a lot of times you guys don't have applications, so there's no reason for you to meet if you don't have anything to meet and talk about. But is there a remedy that would allow you to at least approve minutes from the previous month without having to meet?
No, not under the MPC.
So is there any, I know you guys don't wanna all come in here for a Tuesday evening if you're not gonna get together. Can you have a 15-minute virtual meeting to approve minutes? You have to come in.
We're not allowed to.
We have to convene in person.
Okay, well, then the only solution is gonna be you're gonna have meetings to approve minutes, and then that's your only agenda item. Because
Are we allowed to like look at the minutes? Like you do the minutes, you email them out to us, and we're like, I say, yeah, those look good to me, Elijah. And if everyone else agrees, you can post them as draft with the understanding that we've at least all looked at them. Is that
And so
allowed?
I send them to you before I give them to council. So typically I give you an opportunity to weigh in on anything before I put them in council's boxes, but at the same time, they're not officially approved by this until you go to the meeting.
Right, but at least, I understand what Karen's saying, and I think that if we did that, if we were all diligent in making sure that if Elijah sends them to us, we look at them. So if there is any major, issue that, oh, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant.
So that's a deliberation online, and I would not go down that rabbit hole until I had Mike Davis weigh in on it.
Okay, yeah, and that's why I'm asking.
It needs the
yep,
solicitor's
I
advice.
understand.
Well, and any kind of deliberation should be in a public meeting, and we can only have a public meeting in person.
I mean, I think at this point, we're gonna have meetings next month to talk about this, at least.
The whole point though, moving forward, I sat up there with you guys for 20 years, and there's very rarely do you have 12 meetings a year.
Yeah.
Because of the number of applications. We're not Manheim Township or some of the other municipalities that have 10 applicants per month. So I think you do have to try to come up with a solution, because yeah, you're gonna have this topic the next couple months, but who knows in July? You might not have one, so what are you gonna do with the June minutes?
I don't mind to come in and.
I was about to say, is it really the worst thing in the world?
I don't think.
we
Once a
can come in
month
and
to
meet.
say, we're, planning commission, we have a meeting once a month, and if the only thing we have to do is approve the minutes,
That's what we
well, it just means we, potentially get to the full set quicker. I-
Yeah, I can hide out of the meeting. I gotta go to planning commission, yeah.
I'm sorry, honey, planning commission tonight.
There you go.
If
No,
everyone's
I
willing to
think-
meet just for adoption of minutes, I'm fine scheduling that as such.
It's probably the easiest
Yeah,
solution.
I think so.
I'm fine with that, and the next month, there wouldn't be anything to meet on, so we didn't discuss anything,
Right.
if that were to be.
Correct.
So it'd be approving the previous month's meetings, and they can then be released to the public. I don't have a problem with that.
Mary did say if council's acting on minutes that haven't been reviewed or approved, how's that any different? Typically, council acts on it before the next planning commission meeting anyway, and that's how it's always
Right.
been.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the regional comprehensive plan.
So this is just the pitch that it is time for the Regional Comprehensive Plan update. It's been about 6 years since the last one. It's done with Warwick Township, Elizabeth Township School District, and us. The kickoff event is going to be April 13th at ABC at 4:30. It's basically going to be an open house, drop in, have conversations, see what way you'd like to see kind of the next 5 years in the region. Are there issues that should be addressed? Are there things that should be thought of from a policy standpoint? It is open to the public. Everyone's encouraged to attend, especially planning commission members.
You said April 13th,
Correct.
4:30?
4:30. And there's a website, www.strengtheningcommunity2030.com. That will be our repository, and any of the events, most of the events are scheduled from a date standpoint, but they don't have venues. So as that gets scheduled, some of them will be in the evening, some of them will be in the morning. Everything else will be topic specific, housing, building natural infrastructure, etc. The first one is more of a free discussion among everyone in attendance. Last time it was basically public input, there wasn't technically a presentation. Any questions?
Any open discussion items, Elijah?
Not on my end, unless any of the members of the planning commission have anything.
One question for open discussion. At the last council meeting, there was a couple people that spoke about the pedestrian traffic, and Scott Haynes spoke about the fact that they are trying to do some things there with PennDOT, that kind of stuff. And I was just curious if there was anything that we as a planning commission could do, basically, if anything, just to bring some clout. Like, does it help if we back that effort with Scott and PennDOT to say, we're interested in this? Or
I think it will help. We were looking at grants, Scott and I were, particularly Green Lake Go, but with what would be needed there, that wasn't qualifying for Green Lake Go. So we were gonna look at Arley when it comes up, because our understanding from PennDOT is that's a little bit more fluid from a grant funding standpoint. So it's kind of initial, we put in for something else with Green Lake Go, but no, I think as things move forward, that would be definitely a good point of discussion.
That's all I had.
I think that concludes our items. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?